How to prepare a delicious Mexican pork shoulder stew. Just imagine the richness of flavors that envelop your senses. The unique blend of ingredients melting together in a slow cooking process that brings out the best in each one. Welcome to Mastery in Minutes, the platform that helps you master basic skills in the shortest possible time. This dish is not only popular, but also incredibly versatile, fitting into any meal, any season, any occasion. It's a culinary delight that has won hearts worldwide. So are you ready to embark on this flavorful journey? Stay tuned to unravel the secrets of this mouth-watering dish. The first step to cook this heartwarming stew is gathering all the ingredients. Our star, the pork shoulder, should be fresh and of good quality, as it is the foundation of our dish. Now let's introduce the supporting cast. We need garlic, lots of it, finely chopped, to give our stew a strong aromatic base. Onions, diced into small pieces, will add sweetness and depth to the flavor profile. Fresh ripe tomatoes, chopped, will lend a tangy note, balancing the richness of the pork. As for spices, a blend of cumin, coriander and chili powder will transport your senses straight to Mexico. Let's not forget a handful of fresh cilantro for a refreshing touch and a squeeze of lime to brighten up the dish. Lastly, we need a sprinkle of salt and a dash of black pepper to season. Now that we have all our ingredients, we move on to the preparation stage. Preparing the pork shoulder is crucial to infuse the stew with deep flavors. This is where the magic starts, and the secret to a rich, robust Mexican pork shoulder stew comes to life. Let's dive right in. First, we'll need to season our pork shoulder generously. You want to ensure every inch of the meat is covered. We're talking a good rub down with salt and pepper here, but don't be shy to add a dash of cumin and a sprinkle of oregano for an extra hit of flavor. Remember, the seasonings act as our first layer of flavor, setting the stage for what's to come. Once we've got our pork shoulder well seasoned, it's time to heat up a heavy-bottomed pot or Dutch oven. Add a drizzle of oil, just enough to cover the bottom of the pot. We're looking for a medium-high heat here. When the oil starts to shimmer, that's our cue. Now it's time to sear the pork shoulder. This step is not about cooking the pork through. Instead, we're aiming to create a beautiful golden brown crust on all sides. This crust is a treasure trove of flavor, thanks to something called the Maillard reaction. In simple terms, it's a chemical reaction between amino acids and reducing sugars that gives browned food its distinctive flavor. Trust me, it's a game changer. Remember, patience is key here. Resist the urge to move the pork around. Let it sit undisturbed for about 4 to 5 minutes on each side. This will ensure a good sear and lock in the juices. Oh, and don't forget to sear the ends as well. With this process, we're not just browning the meat. We're creating a flavor base that will permeate the entire stew, making every bite a delightful experience. The aromas wafting from the pot at this stage are just a hint of the deliciousness to come. With our pork shoulder beautifully seared, we're ready to move on to the next step. Now comes the exciting part, building our stew. Our first step is to sauté the vegetables. You'll want to start with onions, garlic and bell peppers, cooking them until they're just beginning to soften and release their aromatic oils. The key here is to keep everything moving in the pan so nothing burns. The onions should turn translucent and the peppers should soften without losing their vibrant color. Next, we're going to add a bit of spice to the mix. Depending on your personal heat tolerance, you can choose to go mild or wild. For a traditional Mexican pork shoulder stew, we're going to use a combination of cumin, chili powder and oregano. These spices will lend a warm, smoky undertone to our stew, creating a depth of flavor that's truly irresistible. Now, here's a little trick that's going to elevate your stew to new heights: deglazing the pan. For those who might not be familiar, deglazing is the process of adding a liquid, in this case broth, to a hot pan to loosen the browned bits of food stuck to the bottom. These bits are packed with flavor, and by deglazing, we ensure that none of it goes to waste. Once the pan is deglazed, it's time to add our seared pork shoulder. The pork should be nestled among the vegetables and spices, submerged in the broth. This allows the meat to cook evenly, absorbing the flavors of the spices and vegetables. The final step in building our stew is bringing it to a slow simmer. This is where patience comes into play. A slow simmer allows the flavors to develop and meld together, transforming our stew from a simple combination of ingredients into a symphony of taste. It's crucial not to rush this step, as it's the slow cooking that makes the stew so tender and flavorful. The stew is now simmering away, promising a delicious meal in a few hours. The magic is happening, and all that's left to do is wait for the flavors to come together. Trust me, the wait will be well worth it. Patience is key when cooking Mexican pork shoulder stew. Allow the stew to simmer gently on a low heat. This slow cooking process is vital for two reasons. Firstly, it tenderizes the pork shoulder, transforming it into melt-in-your-mouth goodness. Secondly, it allows the flavors of the spices, vegetables, and meat to meld together, creating a symphony of taste that is distinctly Mexican in character. Now, how can you tell when your stew is done? Well, the pork should be tender enough to be easily shredded with a fork. And the broth? It should be rich, hearty, and full of flavor. If you taste it and think it needs a little something extra, don't hesitate to adjust the seasoning. Remember, this is your stew, so feel free to make it your own. Once your stew is perfectly cooked, turn off the heat and let it rest for a while. This allows the flavors to deepen even further. In the meantime, you can prepare your side dishes. Mexican pork shoulder stew is traditionally served with warm tortillas, perfect for soaking up the delicious broth. A fresh green salad, a hearty scoop of Mexican rice, or a helping of refried beans would also make great companions to your stew. And let's not forget the garnishes. A sprinkle of chopped cilantro, a squeeze of lime, or a dollop of sour cream can add a delightful finishing touch. Then, ladle the stew into bowls, ensuring everyone gets a good mix of meat, vegetables, and broth. The aroma wafting from the bowl will be irresistible, a testament to your patience and culinary skills. And there you have it, a delicious, warming Mexican pork shoulder stew, ready to be savored. Enjoy the fruits of your labor, knowing that you've created a dish that is not only hearty and satisfying, but also steeped in tradition. From the first simmer to the last spoonful, this stew is a labor of love, a testament to the magic of slow cooking and the rich flavors of Mexican cuisine. Let's quickly recap the steps to making this delightful stew. We embarked on this culinary journey with a careful selection of ingredients. We gathered a 2-pound pork shoulder, a quart of chicken broth, and some canned tomatoes. We didn't forget the essentials of Mexican cuisine: onions, garlic, jalapenos, and a mix of spices including cumin, oregano, and chili powder. To round it off, we chose some fresh coriander and lime for garnish. Next, we moved on to preparing the pork shoulder. We made sure to trim any excess fat before cutting it into 2-inch chunks. This size is perfect for ensuring the meat cooks evenly and absorbs the flavors of our stew. Then we took some time to build our stew, layer by layer. We started by sautéing the onions and garlic until they were softened and fragrant. We then added our pork chunks, browning them on all sides. This step is crucial as it locks in the flavors and gives the pork that irresistible golden crust. We then stirred in the jalapenos and spices, letting them bloom in the heat to release their full flavor. Following this, we added the canned tomatoes and chicken broth, bringing the mixture to a simmer. This is the point where the magic really happens. The pork shoulder becomes tender, the flavors meld together, and the stew slowly transforms into a hearty, comforting dish. Finally, we covered the stew and let it simmer for about 2 hours. Patience is key here. The longer it cooks, the more flavorful it becomes. Once the pork was fork tender, we knew it was time to serve. We ladled the stew into bowls, garnished with fresh coriander and a squeeze of lime, adding an extra layer of freshness and tang to our hearty stew. A few additional tips for success: don't rush the browning of the pork or the simmering of the stew. These steps are crucial for developing deep, complex flavors. Also, feel free to adjust the amount of jalapenos and spices according to your taste. Remember, cooking is an art, not a science. With this recipe in your culinary arsenal, you're ready to impress with a delicious Mexican pork shoulder stew. Until next time, happy cooking! If you liked this video, kindly give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and share it with family and friends.